Our next speaker here is SallyAnnes Kellaway, and she is a contracting sound designer and consultant for the video game industry. And she has a very rich and varied history, so I'll try to read some of the high points or keynotes here. Sally started her career at the Sega Studios in Australia, where she worked on motion capturing, animation, and audio. And then she moved back into academia to get a master's in game design, with a focus on audio and acoustics. She is also a very strong proponent of the development of young females. Sorry. In the games industry, and she is very keen on mentoring students who want to get into audio design and game development. So I encourage our students to talk to her afterwards. But now, if everything is sorted out, yes, go Sally.
Can you hear? Yes, you can. Wonderful. Cool. Right. Hi, my name is Sally Kellaway. I'm a technical sound designer, I like to call myself now. At the moment, I contract to 2 Australian companies and help Aussie indie developers reflect inspired game production with AAA level adaptive sound design and implementation. What we're going to talk about today, I want to present to you my perspective on developing audio for video games. First, I want to give you a really good idea of my background to give you all a little insight into the origin and context of my presentation today. Then I will reveal a little light on the challenges that we as kind of audio professionals face in the industry, and I will share my perspective on how implementation can help us move beyond these challenges. I'll wrap up by talking about how we should be packaging and implementing implementation. We're going to get a bit Schrodinger, it's going to be pretty fun. My journey to both this conference and my place within the industry right now started a number of years ago, but hinges on the concept of adaptive, dynamic, nonlinear sound as delivered by the Firelight Technologies middleware solution FMOD, who I now consult to and present for. Today is not actually about FMOD at all. However, my talking points will feature opinions that I've developed from working within an audio middleware developer, which I consider unique as most sound designers and composers do not have such intimate access to the tools that define next month's or years of their development capacity. Cool. So my background is in music and sound recording, and as a child who preferred to play Baroque music on the flute over music on guitars, I was left at somewhat of a disadvantage when compared to my peers at university. I suddenly found that while I was a massive computer nerd, and definitely intelligent enough to handle the acoustical element of my studies, I had no innate knowledge of the stylistic and technical base that was required to be a standout record engineer or producer, which is what everyone else at my university wanted to do. Naturally, I sought out the tightest niche I could find and applied myself in such a way to make my course convener's life a living hell. I thought that nonlinear audio and video games was the future, and hence would be the only type of creative project that I would submit. I've also completed my Master's in Acoustics with a research focus on psychoacoustics. I split my time between coursework, research, and my internship with FMOD. My research was based around a series of highly structured lab experiments exploring the impact of vocal vowel sounds on accuracy of localization in virtual auditory display. And this was one of my projects for one of my weekends. Oh no, it's gone. It was so exciting. Oh well, it was just a bunch of charts of HRTFs which I developed. It took me about like 12 hours to come up with those charts. It was really boring. So my current ideology about sound design for games, my work for FMOD, and the topic of this presentation is also informed by my early experience working in the game industry. I started in QA and motion capture with Sega Studios Australia, and my first big title was the London 2012 Olympics game, which I thought was really cool. In which, with this project, I was introduced properly to FMOD Designer and the world of augmented, hyper-realistic and dynamic game audio. We recorded real sounds, I recorded real sounds, and then used them to create dynamic audio feedback to the player based on the performance of their athletes in the game. This in itself isn't enlightened or special in any way. Everyone does this when they work at a big studio for the first time. So as I cut my teeth learning how to use FMOD and code in Lua, I was just enacting the whims and fancies of my audio director at the time. But I actually learnt that even in the largest studio in Australia at the time, which was about 85 members of staff, sometimes nobody actually wanted to put the hooks in Lua or fix the audio bugs for you. Sometimes people thought that just because the sound played, that it was working correctly. Not true. And that if they had already told their manager they finished the task last week, they were not going to go back and fix it for you. Naturally, anyone as stubborn and driven to deliver as I am would come to the same conclusion. You do their jobs for them. Implement the sounds in Lua code and don't tell anyone that you did it, especially not the programmer who did it the first time. Now, I don't want you to go back to your team wearing like Guy Fawkes masks and figuratively looking at your gift horse programmers in the mouth if they've always been on your side. However, after today, I do want you to feel enabled to learn, act, and apply this message strategically to build your base and your business. So, I want to reintroduce you to something that we've all seen, heard, learned, and talked about. I want to take this thing from being something that you might consider tedious, obvious, unnecessary, or something that the intern should do, to being a skill set potentially more valuable than your knowledge of how to record sound and design sounds alone. I want to reintroduce you to my favorite part of the audio production pipeline, sound implementation. Hopefully I can sway you all to see the value in implementation, and you'll all want to be technical sound designers when you grow up. To do this, we'll need to get all Schrödinger. The task is not so much to see what no one has yet seen, but to think what nobody has yet thought about that which everybody sees. So, I believe we have a significant number of barriers that keep both sound designers and game developers from getting full value of the game audio pipeline. Technology that both helps and blocks us, a constantly lowering barrier to entry, and an influx of skilled young professionals, and restrictive budgets most of all. These are all elements that are intermingling to create a certain level of tumult in the industry right now. I believe that we should be changing our mindset about the way we work to get ahead. We need to think what nobody has yet thought. So let's consider our challenges. There's 3 big ones. We have our software, middleware, and tech working both for and against us. There is a huge increase in functionality in all engines and middleware solutions available to sound designers at the moment, with a trend towards digital audio workstation, or DAW, integration, or replacing the need for a DAW altogether. This is the current trajectory of independent audio middleware engines. It's going to happen, and we can't kind of stop this at the moment. So game engines are also seeking to demonstrate that they're able to provide simple or advanced audio tools packaged with their development tools, the you can do it all yourself approach, or integration with industry-leading middleware. Alternately, the if you know how to use this other thing, here you go approach. The race to make interactive and adaptive audio implementation accessible to all skill levels is on. This, in turn, creates a lower barrier to entry than ever before. It is entirely possible that a trained musician, recording engineer, or film composer could field work and deliver sound assets to suit a brief for a video game. I do not devalue the work that these professionals can deliver at all, but I seek to ask the question, is an asset package or colourful and visionary implementation instructions really the blue sky vision for audio and video games for 2015 and beyond? We also have more young professionals with base level skills entering the industry than ever before. Essentially, there are more competitors that can potentially operate within the preferred cost bracket of indie developers. Is there the potential that they have a more complete and relevant education, and is this a threat? In my research for the Sound Librarian, I can testify that there are some amazing courses out there that provide very well-rounded and supported educations in game audio. It is entirely possible that existing young professionals will be outshone by new grads that come from these highly focused game audio degree programs or game schools that focus on high-quality project work. And I wanted to talk about the monetary challenge last because it is our greatest challenge, and I believe also our greatest opportunity. We've had a huge squeeze on funding in our department in recent years. One of the first things I saw in the Australian game industry was the AAA studio shut down. Literally, people would come up our fire exit door to knock on the door and deliver us resumes when Chrome shut down or pandemic shut down. And there's been a steady stream of downsizing and redundancies that have impacted the industry's capacity to employ audio professionals full-time. We also know that there are a number of hugely successful indie developers, but we've heard our fair share of reasons why we can't be offered money for our work. Was it that the dev doesn't really have budget for someone to do audio? Or that it's not really a priority compared to the visuals? I've heard these things before, I'm sure some of us have as well. Or maybe that they just got their mate to write some MIDI music for free last time, and they got the assets off the web and implemented them themselves in Unity. And it works okay, like it sounded pretty good to me. Makes you cringe, doesn't it? Another element of the monetary challenge is the perception that sound is too expensive to even start investing money into. Personally, even I struggle to control my urge to scoff at people who say this, assuming that they don't understand the value that sound can bring to a project. It's so easy to think of games that nail their audio and deliver an experience that is greater than the sum of just a great idea, great execution, great visuals, and just audio that was tacked on in the end. Why wouldn't they want that? But we have to be realistic, and we need to be able to empathize with this challenging perspective to argue our value as sound designers. It is fairly reasonable that if you have a limited budget, you're probably not going to invest that into an intangible and invisible asset that you have a limited understanding of. The perspective I have is that if we can demonstrate real value, we can combat the monetary challenges presented to us. So it is clear that in order to thrive in such a competitive and changing market, we have to present the audio pipeline in a manner that has meaning and value to our clients. This will be achieved a number of ways, all of which need to be deployed in concert. We need to be flexible enough to cater for the wide array of development executions that do exist. We need to be efficient enough by working on reducing costs of our service in a way that is valuable to our clients without devaluing our own work. And we need to take ownership and stand alone, proving that the audio pipeline doesn't take value from other elements of development. So we'll start with flexibility. It's fun because it requires no exercise, but you should exercise. So we actually, like as sound designers or just audio professionals, we need to have a really, really wide skill set for implementation with a really deep knowledge of the field. This helps you locate the correct solution for the client and can help you exclude functionality that is unnecessary for the project. I want to take some time to give you some information about the myriad of audio middleware tools available to sound designers and implementers at the moment. I believe that having a favorite middleware solution will become an obsolete way to work in the future. Only being able to implement in Fmod or Wise and not having a knowledge of the entire field of tools will limit the options you can present to your potential clients if you're a freelancer like I am. Particularly, the choice that you have when using the Unity engine is substantial, and exploring these options is important because you may need to differentiate between them one someday. So there's Unity Native. Is that going to play? Is that playing? That's playing now, good. It's recently updated its in-house audio capabilities. That was announced about the time of GDC. And it's deepened its support for 3D audio and introduced a dedicated mixer. These are all excellent things for sound designers, really exciting things. Using parameters to directly and intricately control and manipulate audio and implementing adaptive music is still difficult though, especially those who have no coding ability. So, however, for those who require only simple playback behavior, Unity alone may suit the project. Unity also has implemented a profiling feature, which logs performance and playback metrics of the audio playing. Additionally, a working knowledge of managing audio in Unity opens pathways to using other tools and audio middleware packages as well. Unity has a few native plugins that are on offer through the Asset Store, and these plugins aim to simplify code-based calling of audio in Unity, precisely so that a sound designer has more control over the implementation. There are 3 major plugins that do this so far. There's Darktronics Master Audio. It offers the experience of expediting your sound implementation in Unity. There is the possibility to implement a no-coding method for simple implementations, or there is extensive documentation for implementation via code. Master Audio offers more support for dynamic sound playback, so think randomization of playlists and modules, and the addition of keying simple transitions between music pieces, as well as addition of ducking for the mixer editing functionality in Unity. It is cost efficient at only $60 for a whole middleware thing, and provides significant documentation as well. There's Clockstone's Audio Toolkit, hands over an increased level of functionality to the sound designer through Unity. A simplified code implementation method is still utilised, and the UI exposes many dynamic audio features for sound modules and support for mix between track style of music implementation, which is what Dead Space used to create that awesome horror music. So you could use that too in your Unity projects. It also offers the ability to separate scene-specific from global sound groups, so think sounds that operate across the whole game versus in individual levels or scenes, as well as much more. It's still cost-efficient, $65, and I think it's even on sale at the moment, also with the provision of significant documentation. Now, Fabric and Fabric Play. Oh, why are you playing sound? That's silly. Fabric is a multi-track and multi-module editor that lives natively inside Unity. In Fabric, you get timelines and parameters, playlists, and basic transition behaviors for music. Fabric is, however, only available on a license basis. It is free for students and indies with a budget under 150K. Fabric even offers prefabricated designs and implementations for fast iterations of projects under its Fabric Play feature. This functionality is particularly interesting, one that I want to come back to, as I want to cover some other middleware and functionality of Unreal as well before we compare it to similar asset stores. There is Unreal Engine 4, which now features a fully modular approach to sound implementation through its blueprint functionality. Blueprints are a modular graphic programming language which can be blended into a code project to allow for certain classes or elements of the game to be accessible to non-programmers, while programmers can still work their magic on the main project. Unreal does operate on a monthly subscription basis, and it does collect royalties on release as well. But its true power comes to the fore when augmented with middleware solutions like Fmod, Wise, or Alias. Alias is an adaptive music engine which works off blendable stems to create gradual or sudden transitions across a wide range of intensities of music. You do need either composition or arrangement chops to work this, however. Alias also offers prefabricated entire pieces of music that can be slotted straight into an implementation. There is also the capacity for it to work alongside other audio engines in the case there needs to be a solution implemented for sound design as well. There's also Wise. It's one of the major audio engines in circulation today. Fully featured and with integrations into Unreal, Unity, and CryEngine, Wise offers DAW integration into Nuendo to really expedite and integrate the sound design process into the game audio workflow. Wise also offers MIDI support. However, there still remains a challenge of locating documentation to help the sound designer implement into the chosen engine. And then there's one of my favorites, Fmod Studio and Fmod.io. Fmod Studio offers a similar suite of features in addition to a full capture, edit, and replay profiler for offline demoing and troubleshooting as well. Fmod integrates into Unity and Unreal, but features some of the same challenge of underdeveloped documentation, which is something that I work to fix. This year, Fmod announced Fmod.io, which is an integrated online store of prefabricated and curated music and sound effects that are designed for implementation with Fmod Studio. Due for release later this year, Fmod.io, as well as Fabric Play, are refocusing the idea of what an asset store could be, and they're aiming right at sound implementation as an area that requires efficiencies to be made. Which is our next point about efficiency. We need to start reallocating time spent doing manual sound design or composition, and that's just one of a number of ways we can push for efficiency and create further value in the audio pipeline. By minimizing the time spent doing intangible tasks, we can shift the cost of this to more tangible cost centers, such as sound or music assets from Fmod.io or Alias or Fabric Play. Those of us who work with our own libraries are already doing this, reducing the amount of time it takes to actively go out and obtain source sounds and hence making the cost to client more efficient. We, however, are approaching a time where assets could be obtained entirely pre-implemented for us. Using other services that are attached to middleware solutions such as Fabric Play or Alias, when the middleware meets the needs of the client, is what I believe will be the game audio workflow of the future. Partnered with our own expertise in sound design and our own sound libraries, we can ensure that the initial design and implementation phase associated with developing trials and demo projects is a time and cost-efficient experience for both sound professionals and the development team. Making these improvements to the audio pipeline, there exists the greater potential to be more integrated with the team from earlier in the development cycle. Another implicit and what I believe might be a long-term benefit that will occur if we collectively start leaning on the game audio specific asset services is that this could become a growth area for game audio. If we let expert content creators have their own market of modular adaptive assets designed for video games, we will give this area of composition and sound design an opportunity to flourish and reach maturity at its own unimpeded pace, as opposed to a pace dictated by our project cycles, available time, or budget for advanced composition. In the same way, I suggest that adaptive and dynamic music and sound design for video games should be afforded time and space to evolve. This change of perspective I present to you now is our chance to let sound implementation evolve. However, one of the most critical caveats of audio implementation is that its value is degraded by the necessity for others to invest time into implementing audio. We need our own pipeline. We need to own our own pipeline. Programmer hours are highly valuable, especially in small teams and especially under tight deadlines. Having the breadth of knowledge to find the right tool to suit your client and ensuring that the tool fits your skill set will make you the most valuable professional that you can be. It goes without saying, though, that the wider your skill set, the more options and opportunities you will have as well. Even if an engine such as Unity or UE4 is used, an audio expert is more efficient at implementing audio and saves the need of a programmer or designer to leave their critical path tasks in the first place. You'll be unsuccessful in arguing your value as a standalone department if you do not have the skills to back it up. Admittedly, this is actually a really big task. We can always aim for total pipeline control, and that is a dream of mine. But the reality for most of us is that partial audio pipeline control is where we land. It is a huge investment to learn C# code well enough to be able to implement your own audio in Unity, especially considering that there is a lack of official documentation offered that covers ideal and efficient implementation and usage of the tools. And so we come to discuss how we implement the implementation pipeline. Hence, in the real world, our implementation of technical sound design is likely to be executed more like an onion has layers. I did have to think for a while to come up with an obscure enough metaphor. So we start with just a single layer, simple enough to offer an expertise in audio middleware in addition to sound design. This requires no additional knowledge of C# code, which is the largest hurdle for the more creative individuals among us. And the use of middleware, especially Wise, Fmod, or Alias, will offer a huge leap in functionality, delivered in a separate package that makes for both creation and deployment to be simpler for our side and on the programmer side as well. However, these require integration and further implementation from the development team. If the programmers have worked with these tools before and the team values audio, you are likely to be able to deliver this way. The next layer of the onion, with a little more spice and a lot more value, is co-working the implementation of middleware. This approach will suit Unreal projects that offer you blueprints for audio, Unity projects that use middleware light plugins, or external middleware that offers complex logic creation. If time is tight and there are poor provisions for version control or collaboration within your project, you may need to allow a programmer to handle complex code implementation. This may not be such a bad thing. You can still shift a great deal of audio functionality into your middleware. If you've seen any of Stefan Schutz's work, you'd understand this well. This approach should work as long as you're able to clearly define what game parameter control you require and can be briefed with clear and simple direction on the logic that the game interactions and outcome will follow. This approach will offer you the most growth as a professional, and as it lets you get your hands dirty in the code and learn how the logic, triggers, and structure of the game works. And the full onion version, or what I consider my blue sky visions for the industry, is that we can start shifting our perspective to see sound design as totally inclusive of sound implementation. The power and control we gain from ownership of the total pipeline should be clear to all established sound designers. The value that our total ownership demonstrates to the developers is something that I raised before. It's a saving of programmer time or designer hours. But for us, it represents an augmentation of our own ability within a project. Let's just skip through that stuff. So the benefit of owning our own pipeline and really making use of it fully is that we can become more flexible and create efficiencies that benefit our clients, of course, but ourselves as well, and even free space for other experts to own their own pipelines too. There is that potential that if we let more expert content creators create content and drive more demand for that content to be available for interactive adaptive sound and music environments, and we can drive further innovation for game audio. Ultimately, we create more value for ourselves and our clients by standing alone and becoming more independent. In my mind, addressing these three pillars, or challenges, flexibility efficiently and becoming more standalone, we will help to address the challenges that we face in the industry by becoming wiser, more savvy, and more valuable elements in the game production pipeline. We also open up the benefits of AAA class sound implementation to the wider range of titles. And so I leave you with some time to think about what role you will play in the industry in the future. For educators, the time has come to take adaptive audio to be a key element of the education in game design and development as well. Audio is not a set and forget medium in games and requires design sensibility, planning and teamwork to deliver, and that's not just from the person doing the sound. For students, I want to encourage you all to learn as much as you possibly can. You may never be surrounded with so many potential projects to work on ever again. And by all means, cut your teeth recording sounds and writing music if that's your jam, but develop a knowledge and deep sensibility about implementation at the same time to best deliver your creative genius. For experienced sound designers and beyond, I think the most powerful thing that we can do is to continue broadening our knowledge and of the breadth of tools available in the implementation pipeline, and make sure that you talk, pitch, and work these solutions into your professional conversations. We will not change attitudes about adaptive audio unless we reframe it as something that every game should employ. This should be leading the way in thinking what has not yet been thought about this thing that everyone has seen. And for everyone, if you are finding learning about these tools difficult due to a lack of resources, make noise, but make it in the right direction. Every middleware developer has a responsibility to develop resources to empower us, the masses, to use their tools. And I think that perhaps we need a bit of a credo for game audio going forwards. And this is kind of mine: be thorough, be inquisitive, be experimental, and ask for what you want. So thank you so much for listening to me. I'll open up the floor to questions, but you can approach me personally after this presentation, and I invite you all to my FMod Tech demo on Wednesday, which is going to be about FMod. And it'll be great to connect with you professionally, either online or at Indiecade, Game SoundCon, GDC next year. And those are other ways that you can annoy me on FMod Help and Hints group. And FMod TV, so thank you. Stop.
Yeah. Hello. Oops. Yeah, thank you so much, Sally. Are there any questions for Sally? I think we have time for one or two. Yes.
Yeah, our audio designer is not very familiar with Unity and all that, and we use Unity.
Yes.
And he's not very good at C#. He doesn't know C#. What tool?
He doesn't know that it's his job? What?
He knows C# obviously, but he doesn't.
Okay.
He can't write it and all that.
Yeah, that's hard.
He's a special. He's good at audio. He's not good at coding.
Okay.
But what tool, middleware tool, would you recommend for a guy like that?
Go and find one of those tools. So I listed 3 that plug straight into Unity. They take even less effort to integrate than FMod and Wise.
Okay.
So I think Master Audio and I forgot the name of it already.
Okay.
But if you can, we can pull up the presentation again. As they live natively in Unity, so they come up in the side panel, and one of them even has a no coding mode, so he doesn't need to do any coding, which would probably be really good for him. But they all have heaps of documentation. So for those tools, you can just sort of leave him with the tool and just tell him to go and look at the video tutorials, as he's not going to be useful for you long term unless he can do all this stuff. Because if you need him to do the implementation, he has to do the implementation. That's it. Either that, or go and find someone who can. Or if you don't want to give up your programmer, go and find someone who can.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. Oh. I'm getting exercised, that's good.
Good with exercise, as we said before. I was just thinking about the main issue for me, as I'm more of a designer, programmer type.
Yeah.
I don't work with sound design.
Yeah.
But I love great sound design.
Yes. Good.
So, but one of the main issues is, where do you start, like, sound implementation? Of course, you should be, as a sound designer, part of the team from the start.
Yep.
But designing around sound for a non-sound designer can be very difficult. Do you have any, like, small core tips, so to speak, about sound design for amateurs, so to speak?
Yeah. So, as a designer, what you need is an opinion about how your game should sound from very early on, and you will have that opinion. The best thing that you can do is actually bring whoever is going to be your sound designer or audio designer. You should probably consider using someone separate if your game's big enough, in as early as you can. If you have like a design brief document or even just like reference videos, I always go through and find movies that sound like whatever the game I'm going to make, so that I can listen to that. It's all like, you do it for film as well and for music when you're recording music. So coming up with like this palette of what your audio you want it to sound like, and approaching someone and saying, this is early days, we're going to be working to this sort of timeline. That's an important thing to know as well. We're going to need you a lot here to prove the concept, and maybe not so much in the middle, maybe like set reasonable expectations about what their like participation is going to be during that middle period, but then like definitely towards the end when we're throwing the whole game together as it is like full thing, that's when they're going to be most active. So like using those asset stores I referred to, Fabric Play and stuff, there's less, it doesn't need to be such an expensive thing to bring a sound designer in earlier on, because the assets are all prefabbed. You can drop them in like their demo art or something. So hopefully that helps.
Cool, yeah, thank you again, Sally.